if a sales manager has to translate or review sales presentation and the it's one pages and other documents that they need to bring in meetings, they're gonna have less time to attend meetings. They're gonna have less time to reach out to potential customers to nurture those relationships. That means they're gonna bring in less money.
Welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, product localization, and global expansion. I'm Caterina from Undertow. We create and manage localization programs for B2B SaaS companies so they can grow globally. Today, our founder Nicola Calabrese is back with the second part of his solocast on AI and localization. This time, he's getting practical. How to build a localization program that scales, the tech stack behind it, and where AI actually helps without replacing the people who make it work. So, without further ado, let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast. Today we're going to do part 2 of my solocast, where we're going to talk about building scalable AI-powered localization programs. We're going to see how our model localization program looks like, how it requires integrating AI, tech, and people into a cohesive system that can scale. So if you're copy-pasting translations into WordPress, and unfortunately I see that often, something is broken. Like it's not really, your setup is not good. You need to rethink what you're doing, because that means a lot of manual processes that can be automated nowadays. You're spending so much time on things that are not really, like, they're just tedious to do, and everybody usually have too much stuff already on their plate, so you don't need to also have to do copy pasting. So let's start from the fundamentals. Last time we spoke, I mentioned the 4 pillars of our localization program. The first one is strategy, so aligning what you're doing in localization with where the business wants to go. So aligning the localization program with the business goals. That means like looking at the prioritization, the budget allocation, what markets to go after, how, where to invest more, where to invest less. But then you get the second pillar, which is people. AI, great tool. It can help a lot of automation, but people are crucial. They're the key to a program that works, and they get results. And that is both internal stakeholders, project managers, translators, reviewers. There's many different people involved, and those are all critical. Then you get technology. It's the third pillar is technology. So you have to use technology to make things easier for people. It's not by chance that people is before than technology in my list. So technology needs to help people free up their time from, let's say, admin stuff or boring tasks, so they have the mental space and the time to do the more complicated things and the more rewarding and creative things. And then last but not least, you get processes. So all this is not, you need to have like clear and documented processes on how you're going to do things. So you don't have to every single time think about how we're going to do this part of the process. So we got our emails. How do we process emails? So now we have to update the product. How we do that? Or we have a bug. How do we fix that? You need to have clear processes, understanding and documented ones, so you can quickly, easily onboard new people if you need to. So sometimes I've been asked, what are the early signs of a setup that won't scale? So how, if I look at somebody explain how they're currently doing things, how can I see whether or not it's going to scale? What I see, unfortunately, often is when we're brought in, it's work processes, like not really a program most of the time. Is people are doing a lot of manual work, like copy pasting from documents into CMS or from spreadsheets into core repositories. They don't have a translation management system, so they don't have a platform to manage all the translations in a centralized manner and connected with all the different, let's say, sources of content, which could be the code repository, the CMS, the help center, the email messaging provider. Then there's no glossary. So there's no established terminology across the company for each market. So there's no way to ensure that the same product feature is going to be called, let's say in German, is going to be called the same way across sales materials, marketing materials, the app, so product, or help center, or any other communication. That's a mess. And then there's no clear ownership. So everybody does a little bit of something, but there's nobody really in charge of localization, or it's just like a extra task for a couple of people, which is not great because if nobody has ownership, nobody is really in charge also of improving the process and to make sure that things are happening when they need to happen. So how AI fits into this, since we're talking about like how to build a modern localization program that integrates AI into it. So AI, it doesn't remove people from the equation. Actually, it handles the repeatable, boring stuff. So people have more time and again, a mental energy to do the things that need to be done and that AI cannot do. So one of the first things to do that we do with the localization programs usually, it's creating basically a business case for why invest in localization. Nowadays, this is a question that obviously probably some of you already had to face. Why invest in localization? Why don't we just use ChatGPT for translation and get done with it? On that hand, apart from the fact that, translations from ChatGPT are not necessarily great, the main thing from my point of view is to look at these two parts of the equation of looking at why invest in localization. So the first part is we measure at how much time is spent internally at the moment to figure out things, to do things manually, as I said before, how much time people their main task is not localization. Like say, for example, the sales reps and the marketing manager, they have to spend a lot of time on localization, while that is not like the core skill or core responsibility. That means wasting the money, to be honest. If a sales manager has to translate or review a sales presentation and it's one pages and other documents that they need to bring in meetings, they're going to have less time to attend meetings. They're going to have less time to reach out to potential customers, to nurture those relationships. That means they're going to bring in less money. So they're wasting time in the sense that they're spending time on something that is not part of the job in itself, but they're also there's gonna like a lot of lost opportunity, money left on the table because they need to do stuff that is not the core set skill. So they're gonna probably take longer for them than a professional that's been doing that specific task for several years. And they're gonna not be able to generate as much money as they would otherwise. The other part of the equation, so this part is the time spent internally on this and the potential money left on the table of that. On the other hand, is the potential market growth. So analyze and see if you were to enter properly in the market. Entering in a market is going to give you access to a new, let's say, potential revenue. That also means if you enter properly, how are you going to differentiate from the competition, which is using, let's say, automatic translation. So you enter into France, the French customers are going to notice, or I can assure you they're going to notice if your website is just translated with AI or if it's actually done with a proper localization program. The messaging is adapted by people, is adapted to the market, and the tone of voice is the right one that connects with them. It resonates. It's touching the right pain point. It's not just the same, necessarily exactly the same that you have in English. So that's, again, potential for market growth. These two things together are going to help create a case for why invest in localization. And the other thing that we do after we analyze this potential, we also look at what is the minimum viable experience that you should put in place when you're entering a new market. This is when you're entering a new market, you don't have unlimited resources. That's a given. And you maybe have like a huge website. You have a product or maybe more than one, a software product. Then you got a help center. Then you got let's say if you have materials for the sales reps, you have emails that are going out to the customers. You have maybe a lot of marketing material, sometimes even like print material, depending on your approach to the market. You cannot do everything. Definitely not at the start, especially not at the start. So what we do, we have a customer go through an analysis that's what we call the minimum viable experience analysis. So we look at the customer journey and we look at each step from the awareness to when they start using the product, to when they activate, they actually buy a subscription, to when it's time to renew that subscription. We go through the journey and see at each step what assets are crucial, that they are not only in the language, but also like they need to be properly localized. Sorry to interrupt your listening, but do you want to grow your B2B SaaS in international markets? Because every country is different, and what users value in one market doesn't necessarily matter in another one. At Undertow, we help B2B SaaS companies like yours succeed in their international expansion. We create customized localization strategies that address the unique challenges of each market. In this way, you can effectively attract, engage, and convert customers worldwide. Visit undertowlanguages.com to find out more. And now back to the show. Let's give you a concrete example. Let's say the most successful acquisition channel is you have Google Ads. Okay? So you have several Google Ads campaigns, and you don't do all of them. You pick the most successful ones. You start from those. So you localize those ads. And then those ads, they will point people to some landing pages. So you want to localize, rather than the whole website, you will localize those landing pages and potentially some pages from your website that are crucial. For example, I don't know, like the homepage and maybe some business cases specific for the industry that you're addressing, targeting in that market. So maybe you have like a business cases for engineering, for healthcare, and for education. But in that market, because you've done the market research, engineering is the most important vertical to address. So you start from that. You localize only the page or the user business case on engineering, and you don't do the other two. Or at least you do maybe the other two with AI. Only at this one, you focus with a proper human reviewing that. Then after that, maybe apart from the web pages and the landing pages, then they're going to sign up and start using the app. So the app needs to be localized and actually work well. So you need, again, to test with humans the workflows that are the ones that activate most often your customers. So you need somebody to go through that to make sure, because sometimes even if the translation is okay, when using the app is different, like there might be small tweaks that you need to do to improve your user experience in that market. Because imagine, maybe you spend like so much time and effort on making the English user experience amazing, and then the localization is not done properly because it's done just by using AI, and the target, let's say the French user is not going to be happy with the application. And then after they use the product, maybe they will get a sequence of emails for onboarding. So those emails need to be localized properly, and they will include links to some help center articles. So maybe at least you will need to localize those articles. You don't need necessarily to do the whole 1,000 articles you have in the help center, but those that are going to be in the onboarding email, and maybe the top ones that people always look up for, needs to be localized. So again, you see, like, you have to do everything, or maybe do like everything with a layer of AI, but on top of it, you have like proper localization. I wouldn't necessarily recommend like doing everything with AI and then do some part with humans, but definitely you will have to have this minimum viable experience done, localized with humans in the loop at least. The other thing that is really important is nowadays is the tech stack. So the architecture from a technology point of view, you should have some kind of centralized translation management system. I know some people are saying that they're no longer going to be used and they're useless. But to be honest, I think those people miss the point in the sense that you have three layers of content. So you got the basic layer, which can probably be translated even just with AI sometimes. Then you got the intermediate layer where you need to do some kind of adaptation in there. Okay. So this one is like, the base one is like traditional translation. Then you got the intermediate that is, it needs some kind of adaptation, maybe some rewriting, etc. And then the last one is content creation from scratch. So the first two layers, the translation management system is going to allow you to do that quite easily. So you can focus on the first one when you need to like find new solutions. If you try to recreate from scratch everything, also for the first two layers, you're going to spend a lot of time and resources creating something that already exists, like reinventing the wheel, while you can actually use that focus only on the third part, which is currently, it wouldn't work in a translation management system, at least until now, how they are structured at the moment. And I'm sure like they will update and change, so they might even include the third layer. So I wouldn't ditch the translation management system yet. And also like they have connectors. Connectors, that means they can connect with your CMS, with your code repository, with your help center. That means you can centralize all the translations and localization and have a single source of truth for all the content across the different parts of your experience. That's crucial. Then you got automations as well. You need to have in your tech stack. A lot of like, you don't need to fire emails for like repetitive things like this file is ready for you. This task is ready for you. This kind of thing, you can have automations for that. And you can even more advanced automation with a task routing and assigning to different people inside the team according to specific parameters. And then you got a task management as well. You need to have a system to keep track of everything. Yes, you can use the TMS in a certain extent, but there are some tasks that are not going to be done on the TMS. So you need to be able to manage that as well. Imagine, for example, content after it goes through the TMS, maybe it needs to go into a design stage. or a video production stage, that's not going to be done necessarily inside the TMS, so the translation management system. So you need to have a task management system to keep track of that and make sure that everything is delivered on time and according to the specifics. And then there's going to be also internal initiatives that you need to track that are not going to be on the translation management system. Imagine even just for stuff like, I don't know, the glossary revamp or some other initiative like that. And then last but not least, you need to have an internal wiki. So documentation on how things are done, explaining the process, and any kind of information that is relevant to the team, internal, external, and that is very useful as well when you onboard new people. So imagine you have all the processes in place, and then you want to add a new language, you need to onboard a new team. You already have the documentation in place to help you with that. Otherwise, every single time you have to go figure out what they need to know. And to give an example of before and after, considering this tech stack and this architecture, this is an example, like typical example of what we see at Undertow. So before we come in, let's say web pages. Web pages, before we come in, are done in Google Docs, translated maybe with ChatGPT, and somebody might or might not review the translation, and then usually the marketing manager or the web manager needs to copy paste those translations back into WordPress to create the pages and publish them and hope for the best, to be honest, a lot of times. After we come in, there's a centralized translation management system that is connected to WordPress. So the person in charge of the website, they need, let's say, a page in 5 languages. With a couple of clicks, they send that page to the translation management system. We, with the language teams, take care of it, localize it. Once it's ready, the page goes back to WordPress through the integration. With the team, we do the quality assurance on the final page to make sure that it looks good. There's nothing wrong during the import-export. And then the page is ready. So obviously, it means that it's much quicker. It's the web manager or the marketing manager saves a lot of time without that they can spend on more valuable thing than copy pasting things from documents. And it also allows to scale. This can be scaled, so it can do much more content. Because if before to do something like that, maybe to do a page, it took you 3 weeks because you had to do all this back and forth and copy pasting. And imagine one person copy pasting in 5 languages. That means doing the same thing 5 times. If they want to add a new language, is adding a whole, it's 1 hour per page. It's 5 hours for 5 languages, 6 hours for 6 languages, etc. That builds up. With this system, they don't have to do that with integration. So it's quite flexible and fast. It allows to scale. Then the other thing I want to talk about is the real value of AI in workflows. So obviously, AI can do automatic translation and automatic quality control. It can be and should be used for those cases when and where appropriate. But there are many other things that can be done with AI. And I spoke about some of them in the previous episode, so I will recommend checking that if you haven't listened to it yet. But there's the stuff like a brief creation, task routing, to do some changes inside documents, for example, using agentic AI to replace, let's say, terminology throughout the several files, terminology extraction. There's a lot of different, even some kind of technical, let's say, troubleshooting, especially related to import and export of files. It is really helpful. And it frees up, again, the idea is for AI to be used to free up time so people can have more time and mental energy to do more creative and critical things. While the AI takes care of the more, let's say, mundane admin things. Then team structure, I wouldn't say there's one, let's say, perfect team structure. It really depends on the maturity of the program, or the localization program, and the internal resources as well. So it could be, you might have an internal team that's just dedicated to localization. We might have one person dedicated to localization working with external agencies. You might have what we usually do, which is called a fractional localization team. So you don't have a full-time person, but you have a team of specialists on a partial time basis inside the company. So they work as if they were internal, or a hybrid of those setups. As I said, it depends on the maturity. But the key is always governance. So making sure that it's clear who owns quality, who looks after the AI usage. There are established SLA, so service level agreement, internal or external. So if I send a page for localization, a web page for localization, I have an idea how long it will take to get it back. So that helps as well, setting internal timelines. And what I would recommend is also to do regular check-ins, preferably have with a specific cadence. So let's say once a week, you meet with the product team or with the marketing team. And once a month, you meet all together to discuss localization. So you bring different people together in the same, let's say, virtual room. That's something important. Again, I wouldn't say there's one single way to do this. It really depends on the maturity, the internal resources, and the skills. But that's important. It's important to have a clear who does what, who is responsible for what. And the other thing that I see, we're talking about teams, some emerging roles, things that didn't exist before. One is let's call it AI workflow specialists. So people will actually design systems, workflows where AI is integrated, and they can set it up inside the translation management systems, tweak it and customize it as necessary. And on the other end, there's going to be, let's say, there's going to be a more, let's say, AI-aware linguists. So they're going to have a role in shaping, as I said before, not just reviewing the output of AI and fixing it, but also like ensuring that the initial output of AI is of good quality. So analyzing the AI translation, categorizing them, figuring out what improvements need to be made in prompt, workflow, terminology, style, because they also maybe like checking different models, AI models, and see which one perform best in different, let's say, content type. So that's a little bit more, let's say, technical role, but still like crucial, the linguistic skills and a little bit of technical skills. And then the other thing that's really important when thinking about teams, governance in general, about a modern localization program is how to maintain quality while scaling. Because obviously some things, when you have like not so much content, you can dedicate a lot of time to different things. So if processes are not, let's say, optimized, they can still kind of work. But when you scale, the risk is that everything is going to falter and fall to pieces. So there's two, let's say, crucial things that sometimes there are several things, but I think two that are sometimes underestimated. But first of all, the first one is content segmentation. So not all content is equal in the sense that different pieces of content need different approaches. Even like web pages, blog posts are not the same thing as product pages. If you think about it from a blog post is probably longer pieces of text, while product pages need to have like catchy headlines, very short paragraphs, and then good call to actions for the buttons, because they need to prompt the user to do something, while maybe the blog needs to be more clear in the explanation. They can take longer in the sense of like physically take more space. So there are different approaches. So you cannot have the same workflow for everything and the same process for everything. And then the other thing that is really important, you have to keep humans in the loop. Like, don't overestimate AI. Don't expect AI to do it all. AI, again, is a really useful tool, especially when used properly. But people are still crucial. There are critical parts of content, in particular, processes where people cannot be replaced and should not be replaced. So you should try to see AI as a co-pilot, but it still needs a captain. Still needs somebody who steer the ship and make sure that you don't go against the show, because otherwise it's going to be a mess. So to recap, a scalable localization system is part people, part tools, part governance, with AI that is amplifying the system, not replacing it. AI is not replacing people, it's helping them work better. And localization is evolving fast, but the fundamentals are still what drive global success. So a lot is changing, but the fundamentals are not really. So connect localization to business goals. Make sure you have the right people. Make sure you have the right tech infrastructure, and make sure you have clear processes in place. So thank you so much for joining today. I hope you found this helpful, and see you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Undertow. We help B2B SaaS companies grow in any language. Get in touch if you want to know more. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. If you want to support us, remember to give 5 stars to the podcast. See you next time.